Video for today is going to be a drive-in video instead of my usual walking in a cemetery. It's December here in Tennessee and it's rather cold today. At least I have the warmth from the heater. Even with the window down, it makes it bearable. So I thought this would be a good chance to do a little bit more about the country music stars that have been cremated. With the country music stars I'll be talking about today having been cremated, there isn't an actual grave site to visit, but hopefully you will remember these great stars and maybe even hear a song or two of theirs in your mind as I go along in this video. The first person I'll be talking about, it would be hard for you not to know them if you like country music or gospel music at all. I'm going to be talking about Joe Bonsall of the Oak Ridge Boys Quartet. Joe was born with the name of Joseph Sloan Bonsall Jr. He was the son of Joseph Sr. and Lily Collins. Joe was also born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Joe was not an original member of the Oak Ridge Quartet. I'd like to elaborate a little bit more on that. Looks like getting a little sunshine here, though. But anyway, the Oak Ridge Quartet was founded originally in 1943, and through the years, many singers would come and go for the group. Eventually, they would change their name to the Oak Ridge Boys, and the copyright to the name Oak Ridge Boys was sold out, and the group that Joe became a member of was actually started in 1965, and that was when William Lee Golden, who sang baritone for the group, joined. And then in 1966, Dwayne Allen, who was the lead vocalist for the group, signed on. 1972, Richard Stearburn signed on as a bass singer, and Joe finished out the group in 1973 when he signed on as a tenor singer. I saw an interview where Dwayne Allen, which was the lead vocalist of the group, made a comment about Joe not long after he passed away. He said that Joe was the energy of the group. He was the one to keep everyone energized up. Another thing that Dwayne Allen said in this interview was that Joe would want the group to go on, and he said the group will continue on as they have now added Ben James, a young man in his 20s, to now sing the tenor part for the group. And one note about Ben is that he previously sang with other groups when he was on tour, and during one of these tours he would first meet the Oak Ridge Boys. And he said when the Oak Ridge Boys were singing one of their songs that Joe handed him the mic and said, "You got the next verse." So I can just imagine hearing Joe saying to the group now, "Continue on, boys. You've got this." I want to say a couple more things about the Oak Ridge Boys as a group before I mention a couple of things just about Joe. And as I've said earlier, they were inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame and the Gospel Music Hall of Fame, but they've also been inducted into the Philadelphia Music Hall of Fame and the Vocal Group Hall of Fame. They've won numerous awards. They've won like Country Music Association Awards, Academy of Country Music Awards, Gospel Music Association Dove Awards, as well as Grammys. An added note also is that the Oak Ridge Boys become members of the Grand Ole Opry in 2011. Now to a few things that you may not know about Joe Bonsall. Joe is well known, of course, for the Oak Ridge Boys, but even before he was part of that group, Joe had been a member of other groups that sang gospel music. But I think the biggest thing to me that I didn't realize about Joe is that he wrote several books, so he was an author. And I guess what surprised me the most is that he even wrote a 4-part children's book series, as well as other books that would include one that talked about being on the road with the Oak Ridge Boys. But the one that strikes me as the most memorable for Joe is that he wrote a book that was titled G.I. Joe and Lily. And that is a tribute to his mom and dad, as they both were in World War II. And Joe was his dad's name and Lily was his mom. The last thing I'm going to say about Joe before I move on to the next country music singer is that that Joe would go solo singing, you might say, away from the Oak Ridge Boys, I guess I should say, as he would record a song with Sawyer Brown, and it was called Outgoing Cattin'. And on the label, it's got him titled as a singer as Cat Joe Bonsall. Since I've already been talking so much about the Oak Ridge Boys, I thought I would continue on with another member of the Oak Ridge Boys that was cremated, and that is of Steve Sanders, or you may pronounce it Saunders. But before I get into the Oak Ridge Boys part of Steve Sanders' life, I'd like to talk about a little bit more of his personal life and things that I found out about him. Steve was born in Richland, Georgia, and his parents were Herbert and Lorraine Sanders. Steve was not only a country and gospel singer, but he was a musician as well. He could play the guitar, the piano, the mandolin, and even the banjo. A few things that you might be interested in about Steve before the Oak Ridge story that I'm going to tell you in a minute is that at age about 5 or 6, he would start singing gospel music and even perform on stage around that age. But not only that, he did some acting. He performed on Broadway. I think it was in the production of The Yearling. He also acted in a movie called Hurry Sundown, which starred Faye Dunaway and Jane Fonda. He would be on the television series Gunsmoke too, and he was just very talented all through his life. Steve, in his late teens or maybe early 20s, would go to London, England for a while, and he even began a band over there called Pyramid. But eventually he would return to Nashville, and he would perform with as the vocals for several projects, and some of those would take place at the Muscle Shoals, Alabama studio. Now I want to talk about Steve with the Oak Ridge Boys. Steve didn't start out being a member of the quartet group initially. In 1981, he would start out playing in their band. He would play the rhythm guitar. But in 1987, when William Lee Golden was, I think there is rumors are that he was ousted by the other three, but anyway, he left the group in 1987, and they let Steve come from the band part to being a member of the Oak Ridge Boys. And Steve would hold that position from 1987 to 1995. In 1995, Steve was having some personal issues going on with him, and so I don't know if the other three ousted him or if he left voluntarily, but Steve would leave the Oak Ridge Boys Quartet in 1995, and who would replace him but William Lee Golden. The next country music star I want to talk about is that of Dale Reeves. I've read at places that he was cremated, and other places I read that he wasn't cremated. I've read in places that they don't know who his parents are. Then I've read at other places that they do know his parents were Andrew Jackson Reeves and Laura Rector Reeves. While I was doing research for this video, I found the obituary column for one of Dale's brothers. His name was Cleo Reeves. And speaking of that, Dale was the youngest of 11 children. And but back to the obituary column on Cleo, it said that he was the brother to Dale Reeves, of course, and that the parents were Andrew Jackson Reeves and Laura Rector Reeves. I also found out that Andrew and Laura are buried at Elk Creek Cemetery in Sparta, North Carolina. And of course, that is where it's always listed that Dale Reeves was born at. And another thing about that is that there is no record in that cemetery of Dale being buried there. I've already mentioned that Dale was born in Sparta, North Carolina, but I haven't mentioned his birth name. He was given the birth name of Franklin Delano Reeves, being named after President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. It is said that by the age of 12, Dale was performing on the radio. And then after he finished high school, he briefly attended a college, but he would end up enlisted in the United States Air Force. After completing his military service, Dale would again return to start performing on the radio, and this was in the 1950s. By 1958, though, he had hosted a television variety show in Stockton, California, and by the 1960s, he would sign with a record company and he'd moved to Nashville. His biggest solo hit was in 1965 with the song The Girl on the Billboard. Dale was not only a solo singer, but through the years he recorded some duets with people such as Bobby Goldsboro, Penny DeHaven, and Billy Joe Spears. Dale was considered a big country music star in the 1960s, and he would even, during the 1960s, appear in several Hollywood films. In the 1970s, Dale would again return to hosting a television show. This time it was called the Dale Reeves Country Carnival. And in 1979, Dale decided he wanted to become a music executive. And it is said during this time he would help Billy Ray Cyrus get his first major record deal. Dale was a member of the Grand Ole Opry, of course, and he's also been inducted into the North Carolina Music Hall of Fame. I mentioned earlier when I started talking about Dale that I would talk a little bit more about his songwriting. And first I have to mention that of his wife, Ellen Scheel or Scheil, I'm not sure how it's said, but she was his wife from 1956 to his passing in 2007. And the reason I mentioned it along at the time that I mentioned songwriting is that Ellen played a big part in the songwriting with Dale Reeves. Individually, Dale as well as Ellen would write songs for Dale and other country music stars, but they also was a duo writing team for several country music stars. In closing my talk on Dale Reeves, I'd like to mention a few of the songs that Dale or Ellen or both would write that you might remember. Dale would sing the song, This Must Be the Bottom. Carl Smith sang the song, I Almost Forgot Her Today. Charlie Louvin sang the song, I'll Have Made It to the Bridge. Rose Maddox would sing A Little Song of Heartache. And Loretta Lynn and Ernest Tubb would sing the song, Two in the Cold. As I close out this video, I'd like to say thanks so very much to all of you that have watched the video. It is the start of a new year, and I wish for you and yours a very happy and healthy new year. And as always, I hope you have a good day.